I never imagined that at 67 years old, I would still be waiting for my daughter to call me with words that could break or heal my heart. But that morning, the phone buzzed, and Melissa's name appeared on the screen. My hands trembled so badly that I nearly dropped it. "Dad," her voice said, soft and uncertain, "it's time. Please come. The kids are having their birthday party. We want you here. Mark and we want to make peace." Before I take you deeper into this story, let me pause for a second. If you love gripping revenge stories filled with betrayal, survival, and shocking family secrets, please subscribe to the channel right now. It helps us bring you more true-style stories every week. And tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. I'd love to know. Now back to the moment that changed everything. My name is Orin, and I built my life through discipline, sweat, and business. For 4 decades I owned and ran a mid-sized construction supply company in Arizona. I thought hard work was the only inheritance I needed to pass on. But Melissa never forgave me for being strict, and when she married Mark, a man I never trusted, the distance between us became a canyon. We hadn't spoken in years. So when she said, "Dad, we want you at the children's birthday," I felt the walls of anger crumble. Could it be real? Could my daughter be reaching out to me after all this silence? My heart whispered yes. Martha, my late wife, would have begged me to accept. "I'll be there," I said, my voice shaking more than I wanted her to notice. That week, I prepared like it was my own second chance at fatherhood. I pulled my best suit from the closet, polished the old Cadillac DeVille that had carried me through half a lifetime, and carefully chose gifts. For Melissa, a necklace her mother once wore, because Martha always said family jewelry should stay in the bloodline. For the grandchildren, handcrafted wooden toys, carved by a local craftsman, because I wanted them to remember me for something real. Friday morning, the Arizona desert greeted me with its cruel sunlight. As I loaded the bags into the Cadillac's trunk, I whispered, "Martha, if you can see me, wish me luck. I don't know what waits for me, but I want to believe our daughter has come back." The 6-hour drive stretched like a pilgrimage. The radio crackled with old songs, the Eagles, Fleetwood Mac, while memories drifted in and out. Melissa at age 5, running barefoot in our yard. Melissa at 16, shouting that I never understood her. Melissa walking down the aisle with Mark while I bit my tongue and tried to smile. Every mile toward Beverly Hills felt like a mile toward redemption. The neighborhoods grew richer as I approached. Trimmed lawns, gates with gold lettering, fountains that wasted more water in an hour than my garden used in a month. When the GPS announced, "Arrived at destination," I saw a house that looked like it belonged on the cover of an architecture magazine. White stone walls, floor-to-ceiling glass, and a circular driveway guarded by palm trees. This was my daughter's world now, so different from the modest home where I raised her. For the first time in years, I felt both proud and small. Maybe I had been wrong. Maybe Mark really had given her the good life. I rang the bell. The chime was elegant, echoing through the halls inside. I waited, adjusting my tie. Minutes passed. No footsteps. I rang again, longer this time. Still nothing. The fountain outside gurgled cheerfully, mocking my growing unease. "Melissa? Mark? It's Dad." I called. Only silence answered. I checked my watch. I was on time, maybe even a little early. Perhaps they'd been delayed, caught in traffic. I sat down on the front step with the gift bags beside me, trying to calm the knot in my stomach. That's when it happened. From the hedge next door, a man burst out, thin, nervous, sweat dripping down his temples. He wore gardening gloves and clutched an electric trimmer that buzzed before he shut it off. "Sir," he gasped, eyes darting toward Melissa's house. "You need to leave. Right now." I frowned, confused. "Excuse me." "Run while you can," he whispered harshly. "Your daughter and her husband. They're monsters. Tonight, they plan to poison you." The words struck me harder than the desert heat. My body froze, my breath caught in my throat, and the gift bag nearly slipped from my hands. What could he mean? Melissa, my only daughter? But the gardener's eyes, wide, terrified, told me he believed every word. And in that instant, Standing in the shadow of my daughter's luxurious house, my heart buckled with a fear I hadn't felt in decades. Would you believe the warning of a desperate neighbor? Or would you step into the house of your own daughter, trusting her smile? The door finally opened with a cheerful swing. "Dad!" Melissa cried, rushing into my arms. For a moment, I almost believed we were back in the old days, before the shouting, before the silence. She smelled of expensive perfume, and her embrace lingered with a softness I hadn't felt in years. Mark followed close behind, dressed in tailored slacks and a crisp white shirt. "Welcome, Orin," he said warmly, clapping me on the back like an old friend. His smile was too bright, too polished, but I forced myself to return it. For a second, Edward's desperate warning buzzed in my ears. "They plan to poison you." I swallowed hard and forced my own smile. Inside, the house sparkled like a palace. Crystal chandeliers, polished marble, photos of Melissa and the children framed in silver. Everything screamed of money and success. Too much success, perhaps. "Come in, come in." Melissa pulled me toward the living room where colorful balloons floated against the ceiling and a cake sat proudly on the table. My grandchildren's laughter rang out, pure and innocent, the only sound that truly comforted me that night. "Grandpa!" they squealed as I handed over the carved wooden toys. Their little hands tore through the wrapping paper, eyes wide with joy. The room warmed with their giggles. For a moment, I let myself breathe. Maybe Edward was wrong. Maybe bitterness had poisoned him, not my family. The birthday party unfolded with smiles, music, and too many photos. Relatives and neighbors drifted in and out, plates of cake passed around, candles blown, cheers filling the air. I clapped and laughed, but my eyes never stopped scanning. Every glass, every plate, every strange gesture from Mark caught my attention. When he poured juice into plastic cups, I noticed his hands too steady, his smile too forced. When Melissa touched my arm and whispered, "I'm so glad you came," I nodded but studied the look behind her eyes. I stayed alert, sipping only bottled water I had opened myself, refusing every refill with a polite excuse. Hours passed, and slowly the crowd thinned. One by one, the guests left, waving goodnight. The balloons sagged slightly, the cake was half gone, and the house grew quieter. Finally, only Melissa, Mark, the children, and I remained. "Dad," Melissa said sweetly, her voice carrying that familiar persuasive tone she used as a teenager, "don't rush off. It's been so long. Stay with us a little longer. The kids will head to bed soon, and we can sit, talk, share a drink together." Mark leaned in, his smile calm, his eyes too focused. "Yes, Orin. Let's toast to new beginnings. You've come all this way. At least stay and relax with us." Something in my gut tightened. Every instinct screamed that this was the moment Edward had warned me about. But I forced a nod, pretending to be flattered. Of course. A few more minutes wouldn't hurt. Later, while Melissa tucked the children in and Mark busied himself in the dining room, I excused myself. "Just need a glass of water," I said casually. The kitchen gleamed like something from a magazine. Stainless steel counters, spotless appliances, herbs and spices arranged neatly on open shelves. I opened a cabinet above the sink, expecting glasses. Crystal stemware reflected the light back at me. But when I pulled the shelf wider, something caught my eye. Behind the jars of oregano and paprika, half hidden in the shadows, sat a small brown bottle. My hand trembled as I pulled it forward. Potassium cyanide. The label was blunt, merciless. A skull and crossbones warned of death. My breath caught in my throat. Edward hadn't lied. He hadn't exaggerated. The house wasn't a palace. It was a trap. I closed the cabinet softly, as though any sound might betray me. The cold water in my glass trembled in my hand, a weak disguise for the truth I had just uncovered. Behind those harmless jars of paprika and oregano lay death itself, waiting in a brown bottle marked with a skull and crossbones. I forced myself to breathe evenly. I couldn't storm out. I couldn't scream. If I did, Melissa and Mark would know, and then I might not make it to the door alive. So I swallowed hard, steadied my hand, and stepped back into the living room with a glass of water, wearing the face of a father who had seen nothing. Melissa had just returned from upstairs, smoothing her daughter's hair one last time. She looked serene, glowing almost like the girl I once knew. My heart twisted with grief. How could that same girl plot her father's death? Mark leaned against the doorway, holding 2 wine glasses and a bottle already uncorked. The ruby liquid swirled as he walked toward me. "Dad," he said warmly, "the kids are down for the night. Now it's just us. Let's sit and drink to new beginnings." Melissa's eyes shone with anticipation as she took the other glass from his hand, her smile wide and rehearsed. I lowered myself into the leather chair across from them, setting my water on the table. "That's thoughtful," I replied, "but my doctor has me off alcohol." The words came out steady, but inside, my heart hammered like a trapped bird. Mark froze for the briefest moment, his smile faltering. Melissa's hand twitched against the stem of her glass. The disappointment in their eyes flashed like a crack in a mask. But just as quickly, they recovered. "Oh, of course," Melissa said sweetly, "too quickly. Health comes first." Mark chuckled, slipping into charm. "Then no worries. We have something else for you. Fresh juice. Melissa makes the best blend. Apple, cranberry. You'll love it." He set the wine glasses down and disappeared into the kitchen. My throat tightened. Edward's words came back like a siren. "Don't eat or drink anything they offer you." I clasped my hands together on my lap, forcing my knuckles not to shake. "That sounds nice," I murmured, though every part of me screamed to refuse. Melissa leaned closer, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. "Dad, it means a lot that you came tonight. I know we've had our differences, but Mark and we just want to start over. We want you in our lives again." Her words might have softened me once. But now, with the memory of that poison bottle seared into my mind, they felt like daggers wrapped in silk. I smiled faintly, nodding, as if I believed her. My whole life in business had taught me how to act at negotiation tables, how to wear a mask until the contract was signed. Tonight, it wasn't a contract at stake. It was my life. Mark's voice floated from the kitchen. "Almost ready. Just a quick mix." The sound of a blender roared to life, drowning out the quiet hum of the house. My skin crawled. What was he hiding in that whirl of blades? Melissa reached over, touching my arm gently. "You'll love it, Dad. I promise." Her hand was warm, but beneath it I felt only cold. Mark returned with a tall glass pitcher filled with dark red juice, ice cubes floating at the top, citrus slices decorating the sides. It looked refreshing, harmless. But so had that brown bottle before I read the label. "Here we are," he said with a flourish, pouring a generous glass and sliding it toward me. "This is our signature blend." The glass sat before me, its ruby surface catching the chandelier's light like a jewel. My mouth was dry, my throat aching for liquid. But I knew the truth. This was no refreshment. This was the weapon they had prepared for me. I lifted my water glass instead, sipping slowly. Melissa's smile tightened. Mark's jaw clenched. For a moment, the warmth in the room curdled. Then, as always, they covered it with charm. "Of course," Melissa said, her voice just a little too bright. "Later, then." Mark nodded, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of frustration. Yes. No rush. But I knew they weren't giving up. Not tonight. I sat back in my chair, feigning comfort, as my daughter and her husband exchanged a glance I wasn't meant to see. A glance of calculation. A silent conversation. And in that moment, one thing became clear. The party was over, but the real performance, mine, had just begun. I excused myself with a polite smile. "Bathroom, then I'm all yours." The hallway felt longer than it had any right to be. Family photos lined the walls. Melissa in a cap and gown, Melissa at the beach, Melissa with Mark at some gala, a museum of curated happiness. My reflection passed through their glass, a ghost in my own daughter's home. Inside the guest bathroom, I closed the door and turned the lock. The click sounded like a gunshot in a cathedral. I pulled my phone out, set the volume to its lowest whisper, and dialed. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Orin, I breathed. I'm at my daughter's house in Beverly Hills. My son-in-law has poisoned my drink. There's a bottle of potassium cyanide in the kitchen, top shelf, behind the spices. I saw him dose a glass earlier. I haven't consumed anything they offered. The dispatcher's tone sharpened. Sir, are you safe right now? I'm locked in the bathroom. They think I'm freshening up. Stay on the line. Officers are en route. ETA approximately 20 minutes. 20 minutes, I repeated, tasting the number like a pill I couldn't swallow. What do I do until then? Refuse all food and drink. Create reasons to delay. Keep your phone accessible but hidden. Do not confront them. We'll need the scene intact for evidence. I flushed the toilet, ran the tap, and forced air into my lungs until my hands stopped shaking. In the mirror, a stranger looked back, older than I'd ever felt, but steadier too. I tucked the phone into my breast pocket with the screen inward, where I could feel it against my heartbeat. Dad. Melissa's voice drifted down the hall, sweet as sugar. Everything okay? Coming, I said, and unlocked the door. They were waiting at the dining table when I returned. The chandelier threw perfect light across perfect china. The glass of dark red juice still rested at my place, perspiration beading on its rim like cold sweat. Mark smiled too broadly. We thought we'd get started. Sit, Orin. Please. I remained standing a second longer, inspecting the place settings as though they interested me. Before we eat, indulge me, this house. The renovation must have been a nightmare. Did you open up the kitchen wall? The way it meets the living room, clean line. Mark blinked, gears catching. He wasn't expecting architectural small talk. Yes. We opened it up. To the studs. I asked, circling the table. The phone in my pocket ticked against my ribs like a secret clock. 19 minutes. Melissa brightened, eager to play hostess. We redid everything. You should see the pantry. Mark had ideas. I always want to learn, I said. Show me. Mark hesitated. Melissa shot him a look and stood. Sure, Dad. We drifted to the kitchen, where the blender pitcher sat rinsed and appended, a little pool of pink water beneath it. Melissa moved to close a cabinet without looking. My skin prickled, the very shelf that hid the bottle. Beautiful work, I said, keeping my tone airy. What's that stone? Quartzite. Expensive, but it wears well. Mark exhaled, shoulders softening. You know your materials. I sold to builders my whole life, I said, tapping the counter with a knuckle. When people cut corners, I hear it. Silence flickered. 18 minutes. I faked a tiny grimace and brought a hand to my chest. Acid reflux, I said, as if embarrassed. Doctor's orders. Nothing red after 6. Even juice. Citruses wreck me. I patted my pocket. I should take my meds first. With water. I lifted my own glass. Already poured. Melissa's smile thinned and red-bloomed. Then we'll do tea, she said quickly. Ginger is good for digestion. Lovely, I said. But I'm funny about tea bags. Old habit. I gestured at the living room. Let's sit first. Tell me about the kids' school. We walked back. I positioned myself in the leather chair with the clearest angle on the front door. The phone thudded softly in my pocket. 17 minutes. The conversation moved like honey. Bright, slow, sticky. I asked about teachers' names. I asked about curriculums. I asked about Melissa's volunteer work and Mark's consulting. Every question bought a minute. Every answer hid impatience. When the room lulled, Mark slid the juice closer. Just a breath. Just a sip, he said lightly. To humor us. If I must be humored, I chuckled, patting my pocket again. Truly, the cardiologist will scold me. But I glanced toward the hallway. Would you indulge me first? I brought something. Their eyes brightened in unison. Gifts. I stood, crossed to the entryway credenza, and retrieved the wrapped photo album I'd tucked behind my coat, a decoy I'd packed for sentiment. I laid it on the table like a ritual object. What's this? Melissa asked, curiosity disarming her mask. Your mother's album, I said softly, opening to a photo of little Melissa on my shoulders, sun in her hair. Martha made me promise to save these for a good day. The air shifted. Grief is the only solvent that cuts through a certain kind of performance. Melissa traced the photo with a fingertip, throat tight. For a sliver of time, I saw my daughter. 16 minutes. Mark cleared his throat. We should eat. Of course, I said. Before it gets cold. We moved to the dining room. The juice glass waited like a ruby lie. Melissa lifted a serving spoon. Mark set a fresh wine glass at my place as if by instinct. I set it aside with a small laugh. You two and your hospitality. If you keep pushing, I'll tell my doctor on you. Doctors are overcautious, Mark said, teeth glinting. One sip never killed anyone. Depends what's in the sip, I said amiably, meeting his eyes. He blinked first. 15 minutes. They tried different avenues. Nostalgia, guilt, persuasion. I produced different shields. Curiosity, humor, a cramped calf I needed to stretch by the window, a story that demanded both their attention, an observation about the canyon view that led us to the patio doors and back again. Melissa's patience peeled. Mark's charm grew brittle. The room warmed. At 12 minutes, I remembered a traffic camera ticket I needed help disputing and asked if their printer still worked. At 10, I requested a phone charger because these old batteries die fast, keeping my device hidden and alive. At 9, I asked for the restroom again, not to call, just to breathe, and returned with hands that didn't shake. When I sat, the juice had migrated closer again, a predator's creep. Melissa's voice dropped to velvet. Dad, we made this for you. Just a taste. For me. I looked at her the way I used to when she was 5 and lied about a broken vase, gentle and immovable. After tea, I said. I give you my word. Mark's jaw clicked. We're trying to build a bridge here. Then don't rush me across, I said, still smiling. 7 minutes. The front of the house breathed, a distant car door, then another. Tires hushed against curb. A shadow bent and straightened in the frosted glass sidelight by the entrance. Expecting anyone? I asked. Melissa and Mark exchanged a lightning glance. No, she said too fast. 3 heavy knocks shook the elegant door. A doorbell followed, not a polite press but a command. Beverly Hills Police Department, a voice called, firm and official. Open the door. The room emptied of all color. Mark stood, smoothing his shirt. There must be some mistake, he said, and his voice cracked on the last word. Melissa didn't move. Open the door, the voice repeated. Another knock rattled silver in the cabinet. Mark's smile reassembled itself like bad origami. Stay seated, Orin. We'll clear this up. I rose anyway, slow and steady, feeling my years and something stronger beside them. I'll stand, I said. My legs get stiff if I sit too long. He hesitated, a fraction of a second, then walked toward the foyer. Melissa followed, steps small, shoulders square. 6 minutes or 6 heartbeats later, I couldn't tell, the lock turned. The door swung wide. Blue uniforms filled the threshold, their presence final as a verdict. Evening, the lead officer said, eyes moving past Mark, past Melissa, to me. We received a call about a possible poisoning at this address. Mark laughed, the sound thin and wrong. Officer, that's absurd. Is it? I asked quietly. The officer's gaze shifted to the table, to the waiting glasses, to the kitchen beyond. Sir, he said to me, are you the caller? I am, I answered, voice steady at last. And the bottle you're looking for is in the kitchen, top shelf, behind the spices. The house that had shimmered like a palace hours before now pulsed with flashing red and blue. Police lights bounced off the marble floor and crystal chandeliers, exposing the opulence for what it truly was, a stage built on lies. 2 officers swept toward the dining room, snapping photographs of the untouched glass of juice, the wine glasses, the polished silverware that glinted like weapons in disguise. Another officer strode into the kitchen. A moment later his voice rang out. Found it. Brown bottle. Clearly labeled potassium cyanide. Mark's face collapsed. The mask of charm he had worn all evening fell in tatters. "That's ridiculous," he barked, his voice breaking. "That's not ours. Someone planted it." Melissa stood frozen, her eyes wide but dry, her hands clasped too tightly. Not once did she look at me. The lead officer read them their rights. When the handcuffs clicked around Mark's wrists, he twisted toward me. "Dad, tell them. Tell them this is a mistake. We were celebrating, that's all." I met his gaze, my voice calm. "Celebration doesn't require poison." They were escorted out into the night, neighbors gathering on sidewalks, drawn by the spectacle of privilege unraveling. Edward, the nervous gardener who had first warned me, hovered at the hedge line, eyes darting between me and the patrol cars. "You saved me," I told him as the officers guided Melissa and Mark into separate vehicles. "If you hadn't spoken, I'd be in a hospital bed, or worse." Edward nodded, wiping his palms on his jeans. "I couldn't stay quiet. Not after what I saw last time." The patrol cars pulled away, their taillights vanishing into Beverly Hills darkness. And just like that, the house that had promised reconciliation became nothing more than a crime scene. The weeks that followed blurred into interviews, legal meetings, sleepless nights. The district attorney's office took the case swiftly, attempted murder with intent to inherit. Financial records revealed Melissa and Mark's desperate debts. Investigators re-examined the suspicious death of Melissa's father-in-law, finding echoes of the same poison. And then came the courtroom. I had built companies, negotiated contracts, and faced down ruthless competitors. But nothing compared to standing in front of a jury and saying the words, "My daughter and her husband tried to kill me." The defense tried everything. They painted me as an old man confused by grief, paranoid, maybe misled by a bitter neighbor. But the evidence was undeniable. The cyanide bottle with Mark's fingerprints, the poison drinks tested by the lab, the recordings of my 911 call, Edward's trembling testimony. When I described how I'd sat at that table, pretending calm while death waited in a crystal glass, the jury leaned forward, every eye locked on mine. The verdict came after 2 days. Guilty. On all counts. Melissa and Mark were sentenced to life in prison. As the judge's words echoed through the wood-paneled courtroom, Melissa finally looked at me. There was no apology in her eyes, only a cold emptiness that pierced me deeper than any blade. Mark shouted as deputies pulled him away. "We just wanted what was ours. You never gave us anything." I answered softly, but my words carried through the chamber. "You stopped being family when you chose greed over love." In the months after, I sold my company. I had no appetite for contracts or profits anymore. Instead, I used part of the proceeds to establish a scholarship fund for students studying business ethics, a way to turn blood money into something that might heal. Martha would have approved. I moved into a modest apartment in Los Angeles. The Cadillac, old but faithful, stayed with me. On quiet nights, I drove through the desert roads Martha once loved, letting the vast sky remind me that life, even broken, could still breathe. Trust, once shattered, never returns whole. My daughter's betrayal scarred me in ways no sentence could fix. But survival brings its own strange strength. I learned that sometimes the greatest danger comes not from strangers but from the very people we raised. I learned that wealth without ethics poisons everything it touches. And I learned that survival isn't only about avoiding death, it's about rebuilding life when trust itself has died. Would you forgive a child who tried to kill you for money? Or would you close that chapter forever? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if this story gripped you, hit subscribe right now. We share new stories of betrayal, revenge, and survival every week. Don't miss what comes next.